Hi, welcome to Felixstowe Live. My name's Chris, and we're here again, as we are every week, on a Thursday afternoon or Thursday evening at around 6:30. Tends to be around 6:30 because sometimes it drifts, as I'm sure you know. What we're talking about tonight, well, we've got an interesting one tonight. There's an organisation in Felixstowe that I don't think many people have heard of. It's called Fair Play for Felixstowe. And I've been looking at this and looking at the interests of one of the people who organised it. That's the chairman, Nigel Palmer. And we're going to have a chat with Nigel very shortly. I think he's the kind of guy who gets stuff done. And let's be honest, that's what we need in Felixstowe. We're also in this show, we're going to have a chat with the man called, my apologies, we're not. We're going to hear someone sing. And that's a man called Adam Thomas. And he is a street entertainer. He's a busker. He was in Felixstowe Town Centre today. I've heard him before, and today I filmed him, and I thought we'd share that song with you. He was very happy to do it, so he'll be later in the show. And we're also going to be going to 142 Gallery, which is one of our regular stops, to see the artist who's in residence there this week. Anyway, that's enough of me going on about what's coming up, and let's see who we've got here. I think the man we've got here is young Nigel Palmer. Good evening, Nigel. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, Chris. Not so young, but anyway, never mind. I see
you.
Yeah, I see you. Well, okay. I see you've billed me on your sort of strapline as a planning expert. Certainly not that, but come to learn a lot about it over the last 5 years on dealing with various issues in Felixstowe.
But I think, judging from what we've said earlier, I think you're a person with a lot of common sense, and that is actually the biggest plus you can have in, I think, things like this.
Well, we set Fair Play for Felixstowe up, or it started off as the Ferry Road Campaign Group, and we started it up because we were concerned at the way that Felixstowe was being treated in the planning process, and not just Felixstowe, but the whole way the planning process operates. And it started over the Laureate Fields development, and I think the first thing to make clear is that we are not anti-development. We're not against development. We always recognise that field where Laureate Fields is, or was a field, was always going to get developed because it was within the town boundary. But the problem we felt with it was that the development that the council was pressing for, which was 200 houses, and they were pushing very hard to get numbers up, was an overdevelopment of that site and was unsuitable for where it is, right next to the area of outstanding natural beauty and the heritage coast. And because of the number of houses, the scale of buildings that finally ended up being put up there included 5 3-story blocks of flats, and it's the oppressiveness of it on the surrounding properties, and the effect it has on the visually on the AONB that were our major concerns, and all of those concerns were expressed during the planning stage and were ignored. And what you see with Laureate Fields today is a result of the council not imposing conditions on the developer that would result in something that Felixstowe could have been proud of and would have enhanced the edge of the town. And our concern going forward, of course, is that the same thing doesn't happen, or may happen, with the site opposite on the land behind Conway Close and Swallow Drive, which is being built, if they go to the 150 homes, to the same density as Laureate Fields. And so we set up Fair Play for Felixstowe as a result of that, to try to expand the role of the original campaign group to cover the whole of Felixstowe. And we got very involved with the local plan development process. And as you probably, or possibly, well, hopefully people are aware, a new local plan which set out the building programme for Felixstowe for the next 20 years was approved by the planning inspectorate and the council in September last year. And we provided input into that. And our concern over that is that something like 36% of the housing that is allocated by the government, and the council has to follow government guidelines on how many houses they have to build, is being put onto the Felixstowe Peninsula and into Felixstowe and the Trimleys. And I think if anybody's driven through Trimley recently, and the amount of building that's going on in Trimley, I mean, Trimley is effectively built out now. I don't think there's any pieces of land there that are now not being developed, or very few. And the same thing will ultimately happen to the North Felixstowe garden in the what they refer to as the North Felixstowe garden neighbourhood, which will occupy basically all of the land between Ferry Road and the dock roundabout. So all the area between Candlett Road and Gulfer Road. And the result of that is that Felixstowe seems to us, and that's really that's where the name Fair Play for Felixstowe came from, because we think that the allocation to Felixstowe is unreasonable. Why would Felixstowe get a third of the housing? The council's arguments to that at the planning inspectorate, that the docks requires more labour, will require more labour as it expands. But docks around the world are automating. Docks are employing less people as time goes on, and it's hard for it's hard for us to see. And indeed, our colleagues up in Catag, who were fighting the Innocence Farm development, showed that those numbers that are being used were just wrong. And so, as a result of that, we've tried to provide a balanced view and provide a view of people in the town into the planning process, to try to help the Felixstowe councillors in particular, and to provide East Suffolk Council with some input from the people in Felixstowe, and hopefully we have some effect on what happens. Sadly, not as much as we'd like to have. And in the case of Laureate Fields, very little. Although we did manage to stop the single entrance to the site becoming 8, which is what the developer put into their reserve matters plans, in complete contravention of the condition that was placed at the outline planning of a single entrance to the site.
Looking at Laureate Fields, I went for a walk around the built section the other day, and the thing that struck me actually more than anything else, Nigel, was the fact the landscaping is very hard. It's all bricks, it's all pavers, it's very solid, isn't it? I found it a strange place, really.
It's not part of the local vernacular. It's not what you expect to see in Felixstowe. And I think it's come from a design from somewhere else. Apparently there is a very similar estate in another part of the country. And I think it's been, if you like, it almost looks as if it's landed from outer space onto the outskirts of Felixstowe. And it shouldn't have been. It should, in our view, it shouldn't have been like that. It should have been something that complemented the town, complemented the buildings surrounding it, and respected where it is and its relationship with the AONB. And I don't think it does. It's as simple as that.
Looking at the latest plan that they've come up with, this is the proposal that the same company has put forward for the new site. I mean, what do you think of that? I think that that looks nice as it stands, but it's not going to be what they make, is it? What they build?
It isn't. No, that's the same process that they follow with Laureate Fields at the outline stage and at the public consultation. Very bland and non-offensive plans were put forward, which is actually why very few people objected to it, because it appeared perfectly reasonable what was being proposed. And then at the reserve matter stage, suddenly something completely different with far more density came along. If you look at that plan and add up the number of houses on it, it is nowhere near 150. It's roughly half. And that's what this seems to be the process that's being followed. An indicative plan, which is no validity, no binding nature on it whatsoever. And then when they come along at reserve matters, you will, if they build up to the 150 houses, then you will see a completely different plan, because it has to be. And interestingly, in their documentation, there is another plan in the arboricultural plan, which shows 140 houses and is completely different to that plan.
Really? We'll look that one up then. That's an interesting one, isn't it? The thing that gets to me, and I don't understand this really, how can you have the second planning permission, if you like, the formal planning permission that comes along later? How can it be so difficult? Why is that?
Because that is unfortunately the way that the planning process operates. Unless something is actually fixed, unless something is shown as being a condition or what is going to be the final plan, then anything that is put forward at the outline planning stage is simply indicative and has no legal authority to it whatsoever. And it's only when the reserve matters application goes through, which is the final planning permission, and then the various conditions are placed. So that is the only time it then becomes fixed. The developer then has to build what has been approved. But the outline planning stage is very vague. Now, government guidance actually shows in various documentation that isn't the way the process should operate, that the majority of the plans should be fixed at the outline planning stage, so that there's only matters of detail and so on are required to be dealt with at the reserve matters stage. But that isn't the way that the council operates it here, East Suffolk Council, and I think that's also true around quite a lot of the country. But it is certainly not in line with the government guidance on how the process should operate.
Right. So when they come to the reserve matters piece at the end, the final step of planning permission, does that more or less go through without much discussion then? Because I don't understand why the council don't actually...
No. Once they come forward with their final plans, then exactly the same process that you've just seen. It has to go onto the council website. Notices have to go out to everybody. You get the opportunity to comment again on what is finally being proposed, and the council can obviously approve or not. But the problem you've got is that if conditions are not placed on, for example, building height at the outline planning stage, then it's very hard for them to be imposed later on. And that was what happened at Laureate Fields in the original outline proposals for outline planning permission. The builder committed, I think, on about 6 occasions in the documentation that nothing would be 2 or 2.5 stories high. But that was not made a condition. And then when they came along at the reserve matter stage with 3-story blocks of flats, the reply was, "Oh well, what was in the original stuff was only indicative. It wasn't binding."
Right. So why would the council accept that? Is what gets to me. Why would they accept that?
That's in some cases legally they can't refuse it. If you've given outline planning permission and you haven't placed conditions on, and somebody comes forward with a plan which is in compliance with outline planning permission and in compliance with the conditions, then it's very hard for them legally to reject it, and because there are very few there are no planning grounds for it, and if they did refuse it, the developer would almost certainly appeal.
So really, accepting the outline plan at this point is almost giving them leeway to do what they like afterwards. Yeah,
well, that's our argument, is that it's that if you don't put the necessary conditions on at the outline stage, it is very hard to ensure that what you're very much relying then on the goodwill and the cooperativeness of the developer to work with the planners to come up with something which is acceptable. We have a bit of an issue with some of the planners at East Suffolk Council as to what they regarded as acceptable.
Right. Well, that's really, from my point of view, that's a revelation. I have to tell you, I didn't realise that it worked quite as badly as that.
No, neither did I.
No.
And you know, it seems a strange process, and I think it isn't how I think it's meant to operate. It isn't how it's how it could be operated. It really depends whether you think that that the council, in my view, the council's role isn't just building approval. The council should be looking to ensure that the developments that take place in the town, there has to be development. We fully accept that. We're not NIMBYs. That development is done well, done properly, and is done in something which enhances the town, doesn't damage it, and that doesn't also damage and respects the people that are already there. And I think that's the one that gets lost more than anything. And that's one of the reasons that Fair Play for Felixstowe and the Ferry Road campaign group was set up, because in our view, all the concentration is on getting development, and there's not enough emphasis placed on ensuring that the sense of place and the character of the community is taken into account when they're looking at building plans. And I think you can do it. It can be done. It can be done well. There's no question. It can be done well. And I think interesting, there was we referred in our submission on the Candit Road to the Brightwell Lakes development, and there was a big splash in the East Anglian Daily Times of the way that the developer was working with the community and so on, and the council was endorsing it. So it can be done. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I think there are better ways of doing it than we've certainly seen happen in Felixstowe recently.
Let me ask you about your organisation itself. You've made everything very clear, and I have to tell you, I am a bit dumbstruck by some of the things that you've clarified. Fair Play for Felixstowe then is going to be effectively looking at future and existing planning applications, and talking about them and bringing them out into the open and explaining them a bit, I hope.
That's what we try to do. We're limited in the fact that we're a relatively small group of people. When we set the organisation up with the Ferry Road Campaign Group, we held public meetings. We got people to join. They made some financial contribution to help us along. We had to employ solicitors on one occasion with the Laureate, as part of the Laureate Fields development, to challenge the number of entrances, for example. So we have had done that, and then as we expanded it into Fair Play for Felixstowe, we've made it far easier for people to join. We're trying to look at the major developments. We can't look at every planning application. That's not our role anyway. It's not our job. But what we're trying to look at is things like the North Felixstowe Garden neighbourhood, the local plan, Laureate Fields originally. Now, next, we will be looking at Candit Road and trying to raise public consciousness about it, ensure that people understand the process, because it's quite interesting. You see at the moment a lot of people on Facebook complaining about the local plan. Well, they had 5 years that was being developed. And I think a lot of people just simply were not aware of it and didn't realise that what the timeframes were for being able to comment on it. And it's unfortunate. But then people are surprised at what's actually in there.
I think that's true. I think that's very true. So what I'm going to do at this stage is put this card up and say this gives you the basic details for Fair Play for Felixstowe, Fair Play for Felixstowe, and this gives you the, let me get rid of my little overlay, there we go, and that gives you the web address for Fair Play for Felixstowe, and you can get in touch. There are, there aren't that many people. I think it's about 200 or 300 people. Is that...
Yeah, I think we're about 275. I think is the number of members of Fair Play for Felixstowe. But anybody can join, and the more people that get involved or that are looking at what we're doing, then the more weight it gives us when we're talking to the council.
Yeah, I think that's the key, isn't it? If you had 1,000 or a couple of thousand members, you would be speaking for that number of people to the council, and that's an impressive kind of number.
Yeah,
it's a scary one, isn't it?
It is.
Let me thank you very much indeed, Nigel, for your time this evening. I've really found this interesting, and I hope lots of people have found it interesting and will continue to. It's an interesting area in general. I think the key phrase that you just came out with is that people don't take notice when they should take notice.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily people's fault. Everybody's busy. Everybody's got busy lives. A lot of this stuff is very tedious. It's very lengthy. I mean, if you look at the local plan, it runs into thousands of pages, and then if you go into the appendices, there's a book about 2 feet wide. It's very, very time consuming, and it's not easy. It's not easy sometimes to understand what's going on. I mean, to be fair on local councillors, once again, most of them are, they're doing it in their spare time. The town councillors are volunteers effectively. I think if you look at the other thing that's going on at the moment of the White Horse application, I mean, if you look at Felixstowe Council's response to that, it is very, very good. They've really gone through that in a lot of detail to come up with reasons as to why it should be rejected by East Suffolk Council. But ultimately, it's East Suffolk Council that makes the decision. And East Suffolk Council is made up of people from a big area of the county. It is not Felixstowe Council, the Felixstowe Town Council, which has the legal status of a parish council. It is not Felixstowe Town Council that makes the decisions. But they have done an enormous amount of work in responding to the White Horse development. But we don't always agree with them. We don't agree with them over Candlett Road. We didn't agree with them over Laureate Fields. But there we go. And we try to help, and we're trying to be cooperative where we can be. And as I said right at the outset, we are not against. And I want to make that quite clear. We are not against development. We're just against bad and inappropriate development.
That's excellent. An enormous thank you from me, and I hope from the population of Felixstowe who eventually see this piece, about what you've said this evening. And I said to you earlier, and we'll say to you again, I'd like to invite you back anytime you want to come back and talk about things that you and your colleagues from Fair Play for Felixstowe think is a vital point to get across to the public. We do get a lot of views, and that's the key. We want to get a lot of this kind of information out there in front of people so they can actually see what's going on and make their own thoughts clear. Join Fair Play for Felixstowe.
Thanks very much, Chris.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Nigel. You've been a hero of a guest. That's excellent. I've really enjoyed it. So, well, I think the thing that comes to me out of this is to say that from my point of view, I think joining an organisation like Fair Play for Felixstowe would be a really good thing to do if you're interested in having some kind of input into the future of our town. It really is important. You can get in touch with them at www.fairplayforfelixstowe.com. So get involved there. There's, I think, a contact method on the website. You can get in touch with them and they'll be delighted to hear from you, I hope. There you go. So that's that one. That is, I think, the most important thing we've got in the whole town, because it's the future of the town that we're talking about. So I promised you something, a bit of light entertainment after that, a bit of light relief maybe. In town today, I saw a man called Adam Thomas. He is a musician. He's not just a musician. I think he's a fabulous musician. Take a listen and a look at this. This is Adam Thomas. You're from Ipswich?
Yeah.
And you're a nice person despite that.
Oh. Yes, we'll go with that.
And here he is. So off you go, Adam. Tell me the name of the song.
This one is going to be, what should we go for? Mysterious Girl, as we're at the beach.
Okay.
I stop and stare at you, walking on the shore. I try to concentrate, my mind wants to explore. The tropical scent of you picks me up above. Girl, when I look at you, oh, I fall in love. Oh, no doubt you look so fine. Girl, I wanna make you mine. So one day to be with the woman that I love. Oh, know that I'm the only man who can love you like I can. So one day to be with the woman that I love. Oh, mysterious girl, I wanna get close to you. Oh, mysterious girl, move your body close to mine. Close to mine, girl, you are my heart's desire. You alone, you set my soul on fire. Girl, you are my heart's desire. You alone, yeah. Watching the sun go down, the tide's drifting in. We could get closer now, feel the warmth within. 'Cause I'm looking in your eyes, feeling so alive. Girl, when you touch me, it's time to take it through the night. Oh, girl, I wanna be with you. I wanna spend the night with you. So one day to be with the woman that I love. Oh, girl, I wanna do you and know the things you want me to. So one day to be with the woman that I love. Oh, mysterious girl, wanna get close to you. Oh, mine. Close to mine. La 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 long, la 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 long, 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 long. La 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 long, la 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 long, 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 long. La 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 long, la 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 long, 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 long. One more time. La 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 long, la 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 long, 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 long. Oh, oh, oh. Mysterious girl, I wanna get close to you. So close to you, my darling. Oh, oh, oh. Mysterious girl, move your body close to mine. So close to me, my darling. Oh, oh, oh. Mysterious girl, I wanna get close to you. So close to you, my darling. Oh, oh, oh. Mysterious girl, move your body close to mine. So close to me, my darling.
Wasn't that outstanding there? That's Adam Thomas. He's on tonight's show on Felixstowe Live. He'll be on the show at 6:30, part of the show tonight, and we'll also have the full clip of him up tomorrow on Friday with a link to his own page. What more can you say? He's really good. I really liked him, and he's a nice guy as well. I've met him a couple of times, and he seems to busk his way around the place. He does quite well sometimes. Sometimes he doesn't do too well at all. But he's a really nice guy, and I enjoyed his music quite a lot. One thing we always mention on this show is what's on at 142 Gallery in Hamilton Road, and this week there's an artist there called Caroline Burgess. I'll just show you a couple of pictures of hers. And Caroline is she's what they call, I guess you would call, quite an independent-minded artist. She likes drawing animals. She likes wildlife. She likes pets. And I just had a little wander around the gallery today. I had a chat with her as well, and that chat will be online on Felixstowe Live during tomorrow. I think she's interesting in the way she does stuff. She's not one of the artists that we sometimes see who does what you might almost call photorealistic art. She does much more kind of loose, more kind of wild illustrations, and they look really quite impressive. So we'll see some more of those tomorrow when we have a clip online from Caroline. And I hope perhaps that you can find the time to pop into 142 Gallery and see the stuff for yourself. I think it's really very good. So let's just check out what comments we've got. Okay, and we've got a comment from Brian over there in Harwich across the water. We talk to foreigners here with no trouble at all. How rude. Okay, the things I wanted to mention after this, well, Caroline's show, there is at 142 Gallery next week, starting next Thursday, there's a selling exhibition at the gallery, and that's where any artist at all can take in one or two pieces of work. They pay a relatively small fee, a tenner per item, to put those items on display in the show, excuse me, and they try and sell them. So if you think you might be the next undiscovered David Hockney, or you could be whoever, I don't know, Michelangelo, perhaps. But if you enjoy art and you do work that you think you want to sell, this is a possible opportunity for you to get into the marketplace. So take a look at 142 Gallery, pop in and see them by or including next Wednesday, and your work could be on the wall starting the week after, or starting the Thursday after. Get involved if you're an artist. Get involved because it's interesting and it's an opportunity to do something new and interesting. Okay, that more or less wraps up the show. The only other thing I've got to say to you is that if you've got a message that you want to get out to the population of Felixstowe, if you have a campaign that you want to run, if you've got something to say that you think other people would benefit from, I'd love to hear from you at Felixstowe Live. We've always got time for things that you want to say. Why not? That's what we're here for. We're also always got time for your news stories or whatever you want to tell the world. Okay, I'm going to say thank you to young Nigel Palmer, who got involved tonight and was very helpful from my point of view in clearing a lot of factors up in my head that I wasn't aware of. And I'd like to see more of him and hear more from him, I think, because he's an interesting guy who can tell a complicated case in a straightforward way. And that's a real talent that we need in Felixstowe, especially with things like planning, because it is extremely complicated. Okay, thanks for watching. I'm Chris. This is Felixstowe Live. We'll be back with you very soon. So I'll say, I'll see you soon.